All right, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Game is a Game podcast. I'm here as always with my bro, Eric. How you doing? What do you think about last night's slate of games?
Last night's games were good. What do you think?
Uh, the Atlanta game and the Atlanta Knicks game was a game that I really wanted to see, and I was kind of surprised by the outcome in the sense I thought Atlanta was going to win. They missed a lot of open shots, but we'll break that down a little bit more when it comes to that. So we're recording this around 4:30. So we can talk briefly about the games that are going to come up today, but the games I wanted to talk about was the games tomorrow, the Clippers game in particular. But we'll talk briefly about the games today. Miami Bucks. What do you think about that so far?
Um, just a little, you know, confused about what I've seen from, Jimmy and Bam. I remember sending you that meme of what they were posting about Bam being Joel Anthony in the series.
Yeah. I was trying to remember what you were
But
talking about.
but it's just I thought going into the series I picked Miami, and I thought that you were going to be able to rely more on what Jimmy and Bam were going to give you, but they've been completely awful in this series. Bam has not looked like how he looked in the bubble. He's struggling to score. He's struggling to find himself on offense. Same thing with Jimmy Butler. I think in game two, Jimmy Butler wasn't really that aggressive. In game one, he took a lot of shots and he seemed a little bit more aggressive than he was in game two. But ultimately, they haven't been the players that they were in the bubble, and which is causing them to be down 2-0.
So I'm gonna post that video, the audio. I still have the audio, but for some reason the video of our predictions didn't come through for some reason. But yeah, when I posted it and we talked about it before the series started, I told you that I liked the Bucks and I thought this year was going to be different for them just because I thought that Crew Holiday would have such a big impact on the series, especially defensively on Jimmy, and that hasn't even really played out. Giannis has guarded Jimmy from the start, and that reminds me of when the Lakers put AD on Jimmy. Um, but yeah, he's kind of struggled. His shot hasn't really. I think he's shooting like low 20s or high 20s in pointers this year. So I think the big difference between this year and last year is Tyler Herro and the production that they're getting from that. And they're not getting anything. So
And you also you want to know that note that Jay Crowder is missing in this series.
yeah, his 3-point shooting, yeah,
And he was
definitely.
shooting lights out last year, and Mariza hasn't even been nothing close to that. So,
Yeah. And, they might have just caught lightning in a bubble. And I think this series to me is always going to be what could have been. They should have traded for James Harden.
and that's what I said going back. It was going to be the series of who
Yeah.
was going to regret not trading for James Harden. And it's just funny to me because when you look back on Miami the last 15 years, the years that they've been title contenders and the years that they have actually won the title, it was never really built on this, this idea of heat culture. For some reason they want to sell that, and that's what they want their mantra to be. But if we look back, I don't want to spend too much time rambling on it, but if we look back, when you guys were contenders, Miami, you guys were contenders based on trades and free agents. You have never drafted and built a team through the draft and through undrafted free agents and became a contender. You traded for Shaq and you won the championship. You signed LeBron and Bosh in free agency and you won 2 titles out of that. But if we want to look at the gaps in between that, when you had Wade by himself, you were never considered a contender. Yeah, you were a playoff team, but you were never a contender. After LeBron left, you were never considered a contender. So all of a sudden, Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson are too much for James Harden. It's just laughable to me.
Dan Le Batard, Miami, shout out to Dan Le Batard in the Middle Lark Media guys. He said for a while that people in Miami have been telling them that they think Tyler Herro could be better than Devin Booker, which is fucking crazy to me.
That is the biggest joke ever.
This is a thing. This is a thing. They say that he could be better than Devin Booker. And the thing about Devin Booker is immediately from day one, because I remember when Devin Booker got drafted, he was just like, oh, he's just another Klay Thompson. And immediately people saw his ability on the ball to be a primary ball handler. Herro hasn't shown none of that. Try to start him at the beginning of the year, and he couldn't do it. So I don't know. I don't want to, pigeonhole the guy because he can work on his game and get better. But to me, I mean, it's just especially with the timeline that you on with the team would have been perfect. Jimmy and Harden are pretty much on the same timeline, and that would have give Bam some time to extend. So right when they're going down, Bam is coming up. But I don't know.
But like I said, it isn't the game that we play in the NBA. Don't you want to cash those chips in? I would think that you would tell your scouting department, hey, take a round of applause for finding Tyler Herro. Tell your developmental staff, take a round of applause for finding Duncan Robinson and developing him. But it's time for him to go.
I get it, and it's hard to make a defense, a capable defense with them too, because they just get picked on. They were picking on Duncan Robinson, Middleton. There was a stretch in the game, last night's game or 2 nights ago's game, where they were trying to come back. They had cut it down to like 18-15, and then Middleton just went at Duncan Robinson.
It's just the same thing with gambling. When you gamble and you win,
yeah, you got to get up off the table.
Chips. You don't take the chips. You don't take them home. You take the chips to the cashier and you cash them.
Yeah.
So when you have Tyler Herro and you have Duncan Robinson, and like I said, you give those people the coaches that developed Duncan Robinson and the scouting department that picked Tyler Herro, you give them their round of applause, but you say, hey, you made this happen. But ultimately, superstars don't come available every day. And a top 5 superstar, when he picks you, you have to take that seriously. And I said this was going to be the series of who didn't trade for James Harden. Miami has game 3 at home today. We'll see what happens.
If they get blown out, then it's bad, because Jimmy, once again, his timeline is off. And, when is this next guy coming up? They keep talking Bradley Beal. He hasn't made any notion that he wants to leave. So we'll see. Lakers, Suns, I don't think there's really anything to talk about. I don't think Chris Paul's healthy. It's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. He just keeps on getting rattled with injuries at the worst time. But I don't think there's really nothing to talk about. I think they're rolled.
A quick note that I do want to talk about is kind of DeAndre Ayton. Before the series, I didn't really think that DeAndre Ayton had a lot for Anthony Davis. I thought that was going to be the mismatch in the series, that Anthony Davis was going to thoroughly dominate him, but it hasn't been that. I think DeAndre Ayton has kind of held his own in the series, and that's just a little bit surprising to me. Not like he's a bum or anything. He's a great player.
He's the #1 overall pick.
Yeah, he's the #1 overall.
He didn't. The thing about him is that he was ascending, and then this year he kind of took a step back. There was a couple of games. Mm-hmm. There was a couple of games that teams just hunted him. I remember the Hornets. The Hornets had a big comeback in Phoenix. The Nets had a big comeback in Phoenix. Another team had a big comeback in Phoenix, and they just come to every play. They pick and roll. They went dead at trying to get Ayton in the pick and roll coverage, and they went after him. And he's gotten a lot better. With the way that he's played this playoffs, it's not crazy to say that the team a year from now, 2 years from now, could be a contender.
Yeah, definitely.
So the way he played,
Chris Paul's injury is unfortunate. Shout out to CP3, but it's unfortunate. Obviously, if he's not healthy, I don't really think that they have a chance in the series. Just because I don't think that they're going to be able to manufacture enough good offense throughout the games, especially with the Lakers defense being what it is. I just don't think they're going to be able to manufacture enough good offense through those games to win that series. But it's unfortunate for CP3.
Denver versus Portland, another one of the series where, hey, it is what it is as far as the injuries on the Denver side. They were able to get together a win this last game, but I still think it heavily favors Portland.
But sorry to cut you off, because I kind of wanted to kind of get at you about you were sending out messages about Portland winning and winning game 1, but let's not forget here that I would say 7 out of the 8 quarters that have been played in this series, Denver has outplayed Portland. That is just a fact. 7 out of the 8 quarters in this series, Denver has been better than Portland. Portland got hot in the fourth quarter, of game one and ultimately won that game. But in my opinion, if you look at the game, 7 out of 8 quarters, Denver has been the better team. And what is shocking is because Denver has all the injuries that they have. They're still missing Will Barton. Obviously, Jamal Murray's not playing. Monte Morris is coming back from injury. Don't know if he's 100% healthy. So it's kind of surprising that Denver has been able to outplay Portland for the most part of the series.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. I think it's going to be just a matter of a battle of attrition eventually that is going to break down because it's just too much of a load for Joker to continue to put up the points. Michael Porter Jr. He had a good game one, game two. I mean, they won pretty handily, but he hasn't really carried the punch in which they need him to carry. So I still like Portland heavy in this series. I think now if they let Denver get a split, then it's anybody's game. But I still like Portland heavy in this series. So, but we'll see what happens. So
Let me ask a quick question. Do you think Denver has a puncher's chance in any of those two games on the road?
I don't think so. I think that Portland's crowd. I mean, that's what watching the games. The Knicks game yesterday, their crowd, man. I don't think Atlanta misses all those open threes without the crowd. They just got ravenous and they go crazy. Portland's one of those type of crowds.
Yeah.
So I think the crowd is going to carry them. I mean, I think people are really discounting what it means for home court advantage right now. That's why it's so impressive what the Grizzlies did last night, even though they lost by like 15 points. They were competitive in that game. Utah, that's one of the crazier crowds in the league. But Portland, I just think the crowd is just going to carry them. It's just going to carry them. So I like Portland big. So let's talk about the series. We want to talk about the Clippers. Clippers, Dallas. So the recap that we did that's not going to come out. I like Clippers heavy. I thought the Clippers were going to kill them. They've killed them in the regular season. Dallas tried to avoid them. So it's not like Dallas was gung-ho trying to play them either. Dallas was trying to get Denver. So so far, Luka, obviously, he's dominated. I think he had 39 the other night. But the story to me is just their overall inability to defend anybody. I'll kick to you first. What are you seeing out there?
Dallas is just getting whatever they want. I mean, they're just getting whatever they want, and you just see Luka just looks like he's just in total control of the game. He's hunting Patrick Beverly, and which is funny to me because for years and years and years, Patrick Beverly was this on ball defender that we compared him to the Avery Bradleys, the Marcus Smarts, and Russell Westbrook told us Pat Bev just out there running around not doing nothing. He trick y'all, man. He just running around out there not doing nothing. So I mean, I know Luka's an elite player, but when you're an elite defender, they shouldn't be hunting like that. They shouldn't be hunting you. So there's obviously some truth to what Russell Westbrook and Harden was saying.
I think the guys that watch the game know that he's not really. He's more
he's a little bit overrated
in the game. Yeah, no, he's a lot of bit overrated.
So it's Luka's just obviously he's in control, but I like to stand on my word. I said at the start of the series I didn't really like Dallas's roster, but they've been able to make shots. They've been able to make plays. Tim Hardaway has played the series of his life. He's obviously getting paid. I wish I was his agent or friend this offseason because he's getting paid. So they've been able to make shots. Luka's been in control of the game. It's kind of just surprising with the Clippers, man. It's just, you would think after the letdown that they had last season, blaming Doc Rivers in the offseason, getting away from Montrezl, Lou, all the things that they did, and to come back and to be down 0-2 at home, it's just kind of laughable.
Yeah, so we could talk about that. As far as coaching, me and you talked about it. Ty Lue, he hasn't made any adjustments, and it's getting to the point now. You mentioned it, like, are you a great coach because you coach LeBron, or are you a great coach? Like, he stood there and watched Patrick Beverly get hunted every play, and I read this article with some great defenders, and they were asking how they would guard Luka. And then Tony Allen, he said if he was playing, he would make him pick one. It's either I'm going to give him that right-hand drive or I'm giving him that step-back three, but he's not getting both. Yeah. And just the simple adjustment of even telling a guy like Patrick Beverly, play him to his left. Let's keep him out the lane, and let's keep him just as a step back 3-point shooter. They haven't done anything like that. You talked about the roster, the changes with Lou Will and Trez. Obviously, they were easy scapegoats, but I always stood firm that I thought their best consistent offense in the fourth quarter of a lot of these games was a Lou Will Trez pick and roll. Kawhi, there was a crazy time where they were trying to say he was better than LeBron, but I think we've seen with Toronto's run since he's left, that was a great team where he was a perfect cherry on the top. Like, is he a guy that can pull? Is he an aircraft carrier, or I forget there's this term, like, are you a boat or a tugboat? Can you pull other things, or other things do you need to be pulled? And I don't think he's a puller of teams.
Well, I'm
at least not in this case in his career.
I'm gonna tell you this right now. You lose in the first round, I'm redoing my board, and you're going down some steps, Kawhi.
And the thing about it is, steps. And defensively, you would think that him and Paul George would take this challenge, and I just don't understand why off the rip they're not guarding him.
Yeah, I don't know either. And to go back on your point about Ty Lue, I don't necessarily want to take nothing away from Ty Lue, because obviously if you're a coach and you win a championship, you played a part in that. But this notion that he's some elite coach and he's a better coach than Rick Carlisle, he's a better coach than some of these other coaches in the league, is laughable, because what track record does he have to prove that? There's a lot of coaches that have won with LeBron, that have been successful with LeBron. Obviously they came back down 3-1, but those were in large part because of spectacular games by Kyrie Irving and LeBron James, and the play of the whole Cleveland Cavaliers. So it's funny that when we talk about Ty Lue and you say him not making adjustments, but like I said, Doc Rivers came out in the offseason and said, I don't know how much of a difference there's gonna be. He was sitting right there.
I just it was just a bunch of scapegoating. And the thing about them is, this is the team going forward. They don't have any draft picks. PG's locked up. I don't think that Kawhi's going to leave because he likes LA so much. Like, he doesn't even live in LA. He lives in San Diego. I think he takes an hour every day to commute to get to where he lives, to get to the Clippers. That just shows how much he likes where he's at. So I don't think he's going to move. He has a young child. So I think probably if they do end up losing, maybe that's too far forward, they would have to trade Paul George. But I looked at it briefly. I couldn't find any good trades.
I mean, if they lose this series, I think we'll do on the whole entire episode about them, their future.
No, there's a bill is due.
We'll definitely do that. But
a bill is due.
But going back to the series and the play also,
what adjustments? Let's go to adjustments.
I think that obviously Serge Ibaka hasn't really played a lot in the series.
I think he's hurt. He's not.
He's obviously probably not 100% healthy, but I think that's also an issue because they don't have a true rim protector.
Zubac's look terrible.
I mean, their roster, I think the media and myself, we've kind of overrated their roster.
Yeah. I never liked it. I never liked
the roster, and I would give credit, but Reggie Jackson, Batum, Zubac, and all these guys, we just overrated them for too long. And I don't know if it's because of the fit with the roster, or is it that most of those guys are, their, Father Time has came and claimed them. Batum hasn't looked good. Reggie Jackson doesn't look good. Patrick Beverly doesn't look good. So when you talk about adjustments, hopefully Ty Lue at the start of the next game, he picks either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George to start on Luka from the beginning of the game. That has to be the number one adjustment. You have to put one of your premier defenders on him. You have to take him out of the game because he's the head of the snake. And you're going to have to require those other players to beat you. You're going to have to require those other players to get their own shots and to beat you.
I think I would actually do it a little bit different. I was thinking about it today. One of the series that always sticks out in my mind, will forever stick out in my mind, is when the Hawks beat the Magic. And they pretty much went with the system like, we're not doubling Dwight. Dwight can score 40, but none of the other guys, we're not doubling, and the other guys getting threes, we're not doubling. If you want to score 40, go ahead and score 40. So that might be to me, that might be an actual point of attack is like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're not switching. So whoever's guarding him, fight underneath the screen. We're not switching. If he wants to go for 60, he's going for 60. But these open shots to Kleba and to Tim Hardaway Jr. and to Dorian Finney-Smith, we're not having none of that. We're not having none of that. If he wants to score 70, let him get it. But that's not the way that he wants to play. And I think that might throw off the team. Another thing they might do is what my man Nick Nurse, best coach in the league, did last year versus the Celtics. He went boxing one. Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing they could do. They could go boxing one on Luka. And in that situation, you don't really need to in that situation, it doesn't care if Patrick Beverly because everybody has help. The no switching situation, I was thinking that maybe they could start a lineup with Marcus Morris at center and they play man. Man is a player that he actually played really good in the regular season. And I'm surprised he didn't get minutes to start with. His rotations have been weird to me. Rondo's not really playing, and you can kind of see Rondo's like, man, what the fuck is going on here? Like he was screaming at Lou the other game. And that's the thing with Rondo is just like,
oh, man.
It is though he has to respect the situation for him to be good. And he's probably looking at them like, man, look at this shit, man. I don't respect this shit. Look at this. They over here, they're arguing, they're messing up rotations. They have this dumb look on their faces and sort of thing. Like, man, why did I come over to this team? So we'll see. I mean, this is a big game for
what have you thought about the Clippers offensively? Let me ask you.
I mean, they're scoring points, but they get bogged down on offense. That's the thing. When I said I didn't like this team, I didn't like that there was so much redundancy. There's the same thing I do not like about Brooklyn. There's too much redundancy, and basketball's not played like that. The reason why the Lakers, I think, are so successful is that you have LeBron who stirs the drink, and then you have AD who wants to be that additional player. And their games actually fit each other. You can actually run a play, a LeBron AD pick and roll. You get both of your best players involved, and it makes sense. Like with the Clippers, what's their clutch time offense? It's just give the ball to Kawhi one-on-one, and he's going to ball stop. He's a ball stopper by nature. He's not a slash the rim. People dive to me and I'm kicking to people like LeBron, like Luka. That's not his game.
That's not his game.
So, and that's not Paul George's game either. They're ISO players at the end of the day. And what I'm saying is that in Marcus Morris, he's a facsimile of that. He's not as good as them, but if you're going to get the full value out of him, it can't be as a standstill three-point shooter. The value is, remember when he was doing work on the Knicks last year, they were giving him the ball and he was their number one guy. He was ISOing. Mm-hmm. You can only be so good with him doing that, but that's his game. Like to ask him, it's like Harrison Barnes, to ask him just to stand in the corner to shoot threes, he's not going to do it well. Same for Reggie Jackson. You have to give him the ball. You're not going to be a good team if you give him the ball, but you have to give him the ball for him to play well.
If you were Coach Lou, would you start Rondo?
I would start Rondo, and I would probably go an 8-man lineup. I would go Rondo. I would start Rondo, and I would start Marcus Morris. And then when I start Rondo, we're putting Paul George on him, and then we're going boxing one to start the game. I'm taking Reggie Jackson. He's out the lineup. Pat Beverly's out the lineup. I'm playing Luke Kennard to see if he can give me some bench scoring and some punch. But I might, to me, I think that the lineup that should be playing the most minutes is Kawhi, Paul George, Batum, Marcus Morris, and Man. That on that lineup, you have 5 guys, all 6'5" and above, big enough to physically get up. And then we're getting in Luka. We're getting in him physically, and we're not switching. If he wants to, if we have to fight underneath the screen and he's shooting threes all day, that's fine. But you're not doing this where you're dishing out to guys and, Tim Hardaway Jr. is going crazy and this guy's going crazy. We're not doing none of that. I would chunk up the game.
You know what's also interesting about Luka is I always knew that Luka was a big guard, but his ability to post up Kawhi and Paul George and Marcus Morris and be able to just finish over contact like that. I never really knew he was that strong where,
He's a big guy.
he's supposed to
He to me, he's always got the LeBron James comparisons, but to me, he's like Harden. Like when you look at him, you don't expect him to get past people, but he's strong and he's crafty. And that's why the debate of LeBron, Kawhi Leonard, I always thought it was ridiculous because the way that you and Zach Lowe said it today on his podcast, the way that you become a god in the NBA is that you can play make. You can create plays for others. That's the step you're a Boston fan. That's a step that Tatum and Brown need to take. Yes. Like it's good to score for yourself.
And that's why I ultimately said I didn't think they were going to be a good team because I didn't think that they had instituted that in their game
yet. Yeah. It's good to score for yourself. Mm-hmm. Kawhi can score for himself, but can you get others easy baskets? That's why LeBron is the best player ever, because he can do all that stuff. He can, if you want him to really amp it up on defense, we've seen it last year with Jamal Murray, which is another knock on Kawhi, like dog, like get on this dude. But the way that you really become a great player is you make plays for others. And there's nobody on the team that does that. And I think what messed people up in Toronto was they were like, oh, Kawhi did it on their own, not knowing that look at Kyle Lowry and look at Van Vliet. These are elite players on their own. They took Boston to 7 when Siakam was a MIA. He was on a milk carton. Mm-hmm. So that's a great team, and everybody they want to. And I think it's because it's LeBron James. Hey, a lot of Boston media,
obviously,
they wanted to give it to him so bad that they discredit what Kyle Lowry and Van Vliet brought to the table. It's like Lowry and Van Vliet brought them to that point. It's just, we talk a lot about, and I'll throw it to you real quick. I know I've been rambling. We talk a lot about who can take the last shot. Brooklyn has a lot of guys that can get the last shot. And I said, that's cool. But there's also 47 minutes before you get to that last shot. And can you put your team in a position where they're tied or they're winning to get to that point where people are taking the last shots? And not too many players can do that. And I think we're seeing that Kawhi and Paul George are not really the players that could get you to that 47, 48th minute where you're leading and those dagger shots matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, to, kind of defer. That's, one of the reasons, like I said earlier, is one of the reasons why I thought Boston would struggle this year is I didn't know if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown had that kind of game yet where they could get other players using shots. Yeah, they can create for themselves, but I think that's something that you develop and you build over time. And I just hadn't seen that from them in previous years because they had always played with an elite roster with Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, Kyrie Irving. You didn't need to get those other players shots. They could get their own shots. Or you could run your offense and you didn't really need for them to create. So I definitely agree with your point there, but you made you had some good ideas for what the Clippers would do. I ultimately would start Rondo. I would play Kennard. It's kind of laughable that you gave Kennard $64 million and he's played 0 minutes in this series. You can't tell me that he cannot provide nothing off the bench when the rest of the players that you've been playing haven't really given you nothing. So they need to insert him into the lineup and see if he can give them some scoring off the bench. But ultimately, if they lose this series, regardless of how they lose this series, even if they come back and they tie it 2-2, winning 2 games on the road, where I believe it's extremely going to be hard. If I had to pick, I do think they're going to win game 3. Their backs are going to be against the walls. They're going to play freely. I think they are going to win game 3. But if they lose this series, we're gonna have to spend a whole show on them. And
honestly, I see them losing game 3. If I'm gonna pick, I'll pick them to lose, and this is why, because they just make excuses. It's always a bunch of excuses.
Yeah.
This player's fault. It's this fault. It's that. It's this guy, coach.
Yeah. Before we move on, we just got to talk about that real quick. I even said it in the offseason. I haven't been me and Doc Rivers, we've been at wars for years for, the way he left the Celtics, and I've always had that against him. But I thought it was kind of corny about Paul George coming out and blaming the coach and, you guys, it's Montrez, it's the bubble. It was just excuse after excuse. And, now none of those excuses are here, and you guys are down 0-2. So, and watching Paul George's post game interview after game 2, his body language to me, it didn't kind of sit right with me. His body language looked bad. But ultimately, like I said, they have to find something in this series, find a way to take away Luka or find a way to take away the others, because the way they have shot, and it's kind of like I said, I was never a fan of Dallas's roster, but the way that the others have played in LA, you just would have to think, okay, well, if they play like that in LA, what are they going to do back home in Dallas? They have to be going home confident, feeling really confident.
And remember, Dallas is going to be full. Texas is no restrictions. Dallas Arena is going to be full, and they're going to be in there rocking.
I want to see how they respond. Obviously,
they're going to be in there rocking.
Ty Lue, Rondo, you have some players who have been in these kind of situations, who can provide leadership. So hopefully they can do that. So we'll see what happens. The game is tomorrow, 6:30. Kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. So this is the West breakdown. Definitely subscribe. We're going to go ahead and do the East as well. So definitely subscribe, get at us. If you have a comment, question about anything, respond to all the comments.
Before we go, let's pick tonight's game. I know Milwaukee's game. Milwaukee, and let's pick the games that we got going on tonight.
I like Miami. I think Miami's going to pull it out tonight. I don't think they're going to get swept. I think the Lakers roll big, and I think Portland rolls big.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that Miami's going to get their stuff together tonight, and they're going to win. I obviously have the Lakers winning, and I have Denver winning game 3. And it's, again, I know the people out there are watching, people that know me, I'm a Portland hater, but like I said, Denver has outplayed them 7 of 8 quarters in this series. Denver has just looked better, has looked like the better team. And I think that wrinkle of throwing Aaron Gordon on Damian Lillard, obviously Damian Lillard is an elite player, an all NBA player, and I'm pretty sure that he will figure that out and find his spots in his ways to score. But I just think that Denver has looked like the better team. So
you mentioned that wrinkle, and if they lose, that's another team that's, I don't think they're on the hot seat per se, because they don't have the expectations that the Clippers do. I don't think anybody's picking them to win the title besides Charles Barkley. But
he picks them every year.
but I think that if they do lose this series, I think it is going to be nut cutting time in Portland, because you can't just keep running it back.
Oh yeah, you have to. They would have to. They would have.
So I don't know what that looks like, but I think that it's nut cutting time in Portland if they lose the series. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's it for us. We're gonna go ahead and do the West. Definitely subscribe and look for our Western Conference breakdown.
All right, sounds good.